Hello and welcome to Blaugrana Everything News Roundup, a quick summary of the main events that happened in the world of FC Barcelona. In today's roundup, we'll be talking once again about Lamine Yamal and his brilliance because why not? Sunday was a special night, and not just because Spain beat England in the final of the Euros, but also because Argentina lifted yet another Copa America, which meant that a certain Masia graduate won his 45th career title. Actually, on the topic of Masia, there's quite a lot to unpack here because if one thing is for sure, Masia has been doing some very heavy lifting at the just ended Euros. But before we go any further, some housekeeping. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button too, leave a comment while you're at it, okay? Alright, so for possibly the last time this month, let's start off by talking about Lamine Yamal. This time around, he wasn't able to find the back of the net, thanks in large part to what was admittedly a great performance from Jordan Pickford. That first save on Lamine in particular was really good. But you know what was better? Lamine Yamal, of course. I mean, putting his age aside, which is ridiculous enough, but here's a guy who started 6 matches, and in those starts, he got 4 assists and scored arguably the goal of the tournament. I beg your pardon, scored the goal that has now been confirmed as the goal of the tournament, which came in the biggest possible moment as well. Then putting all of that aside, there's the fact that he was a chance creation machine. In the total 7 games he played in, he had the most chances created at 19, the most open play chances created at 16, get it because he's 16, the most big chances created with 8, and he was joined for most goal involvements at 5. So with all of that said, let's throw in the fact now that he did all of this while he was 16 and a few days short of 17 and a few days into being 17. Okay, and throw in the fact that in the 2 biggest matches of his career, he dropped arguably 2 of the most mature and well-rounded performances of said young career. Further to that, you can consider the fact that he has literally been growing older as the tournament progressed, which, by the way, is the case, I guess, for everybody who was involved. So maybe it's not such a crazy thing to consider. But, you know, he has been looking more and more polished as the tournament progressed. And then keep in mind that the deeper a team goes into a tournament, the greater the pressure on teams involved and the more the weight of expectation on individual players, especially on the younger players who the team relies on to be the creative force. That's why when you see kids like Yamal and let's say Guller at this tournament, or Pedri at Euro 2020, or even as far back as Modric at Euro 2008, yeah, I'm that old, it takes a lot of guts, personality and quality to be that guy for your national team at a young age. More so for guys like Pedri and Lamine because they had competition from actual adults on the bench waiting to take their spot. But just all around, Sunday was really a big W for a humble little academy known as La Masia. Don't get me twisted. This Spain squad is far from the most La Masia heavy we've ever seen from a Spain squad. I mean, if you look at the 2010 and 2012 Spain squads, they had at least 7 La Masia graduates. This time around, there were only 5: Fermin, Grimaldo, Cucurella, Olmo, and Yamal. But talk about impact from those few 5, because it's not a stretch to say that without Cucurella, Olmo, and Yamal in particular, Spain do not win this Euro. In fact, here is a fun stat for all the stats nerds tuning in. In the 4 knockout round fixtures Spain played and won, they scored a total of 10 goals, and get this, but 3 of those goals were scored or assisted by a La Masia graduate. Hence, all of that heavy lifting that I spoke about earlier. I'm not saying this to discredit or detract from all the other academies that produced the players who were vital to Spain's success. Madrid, Bilbao, Sociedad, Betis all produced a lot of the players that made a mark. But I went back and checked, okay? I ran the numbers, I did the math, and none of the other academies had the same output as La Masia in as far as goal contributions in those 4 knockout round matches is concerned. If you want to count defensive interventions, go ahead and do that, but then I'll have to point out that Dani Olmo clearance on the goal line, which saved that game from going into extra time, because we know England was some extra time merchants with Southgate, who's now left. But they were. Now, I shouldn't even have to throw in all of that statement to justify my point, because one thing that we all know for sure is that when Masia cooks, Spain feasts. And all tournament, including on Sunday night, Masia cooked. So it was definitely yet another wonderful moment for Masia graduates, especially when you consider the fact that I haven't even thrown in other Masia products like Xavi Simons and his contributions. And actually, when you look at the goals of the tournament for this Euro, 3 out of the 4 goals that have been featured were scored by Masia graduates, or at least Masia products, okay? Lamine Yamal, Xavi Simons, and Daniel. It's just how it is. It's all W's for Masia at this Euro, and not just because of winning trophies. And guess what? Winning trophies and Masia didn't stop there. It didn't end with that Euro. Why? Because, well, on Monday morning, we saw yet another Masia graduate lifting a trophy with his national team. I'm of course talking about a certain Lionel Messi, who won yet another Copa America, making it 45 titles won in his career now, the most of any footballer who is, since they kept those records, the most. The actual match, Argentina and Colombia, wasn't the best for Messi. I mean, he went off injured early on in the second half, and to be honest, this tournament in particular, he had his issues, I think, with his health, but just generally, he wasn't at his usual level, so he had to watch the rest of the game, including extra time from the bench. But as fate would have it, Lautaro Martinez finally beat the Gonzalo Higuain reincarnate allegations, as he scored the goal that clinched Argentina's 4th trophy in 3 years. These guys have won more trophies in those 3 years than the number of matches they've lost in those 3 years. Think about that for a second. Absolutely wonderful stuff, of course, for Leo Messi, and that means that the football scriptwriters have basically set up a reunion between Messi and Lamine, or as Adidas would put it, the GOAT and the kid, because Spain will face Argentina next year in Finalissima, and honestly, if both Messi and Lamine score in that game, I might just get sweaty eyes. You know what I mean? I might sweat from my eyes. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of sweaty eyes, one thing that brings my eyes close to sweating is the recent injury histories of both Ronald Araujo and Pedri. We all know they picked up injuries playing for their nations against Germany and Brazil respectively, and since picking up those injuries, they've now all been able to get back in Barcelona, where the club did some tests, and now we have some more details on their injuries. Araujo suffered a right hamstring tendon injury, and reports state that he could be out for anywhere between 2 to 4 months. The 4 months timeline would be the schedule should he require surgery. If not, which seems to be the case right now, he seems to have opted not to have the surgery, then he could be back in 2 months. Pedri, on the other hand, has suffered a severe knee sprain, which Barca say they don't know how long he'll be out for. They did that usual statement of his recovery will determine his return, all that nonsense. But look, thank God for WebMD, because we can just Google that, and from there we know that for a knee sprain he should be back in 6 weeks at most, 4 weeks at least. Anywho, that's basically that. The next upload is going to be a lot more transfer window oriented, so do keep your eyes out for that, or keep an ear out. I don't know which one you have to do, but do that. We're starting to hear more about deals like Nico to Barca, as Barca now plan to begin contract negotiations with Nico's camp, and it's believed that there's a lot of positive energy around this, but I won't believe it until I see him in the jersey. So for now, I'll just keep on reporting facts and not fantasies. So it could be some exciting times coming up. I'm just pissed at Deco that it took a stellar Euros to convince that man of Nico's talents and the need to sign him over Luis Diaz. When it was really all apparent for anybody who watched Bilbao last season, which is most of us. Oh well, we will talk more about all of that later, but otherwise, I thank you all for tuning in. Have a great day, and Forza Barça.